my only one.
Well, hello everybody. We've actually reached the final of the Great British Sewn Bee. I cannot believe that this season has gone over so quickly. And this week we are joined by somebody I've known for quite a while, Peter Anderson from Anderson Hairdressing in Monkseaton. However, Peter has also got another claim to fame, and he was on the season 3 of the Interior Design Master. So it'd be really wonderful this week to hear your perspective of being on a reality show, as well as your views on the Great British Sewn Bee. But
Yeah.
Peter, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. I mean, I started hairdressing in 1975, so I'm quite a qualified hairdresser, and I've always liked interiors. So it was my son that said, Dad, I want you to go on the show, and I thought, no, I'm too old, I mean. But we filled the form in, and when it came to what qualifications have you got? I didn't have any, so I had to put, I was born in the sharp pile 70s, right through to the minimalist noughties. So I think that's what got us on the show. Anyway, so I'm a qualified hairdresser, and I've got a big thing about Jack Russell's and interior design.
So if you hear the extra background noise, it's your rescue dog. So
it's Junior, yeah.
Yeah, Junior wanted to be on the show, but you've banished him to another room.
Yeah, he's got a loud bark.
That particular show was hosted by Alan Carr and Michelle.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Guru, and is it?
Yeah,
Georgie?
yeah, nearly right there.
Really, really strict judge, I have to say, on interior design, and considerably stricter than the judges come across on the Sewn Bee. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that. Yeah. And they've always got a guest judge, and it depends on what he likes to, sort of to what you've done. And it's very similar because you can have a really bad week, and as I think Kit had a really bad week in the semi-finals, and it's the way it goes, really. But yeah, they're much stricter on interior design masters.
Yeah.
Say.
And of course, we're joined by the lovely Mr. MacDonald, who is you know what it is, Alistair? Everybody has been loving the comments on YouTube, the hints and tips that you give. Because obviously, what people don't necessarily realise is that you came from St. Martin's, which is probably the college for fashion. I'm right in saying that, aren't I?
So I was very fortunate. Well, I worked my absolute butt off to get in, but I was one of 6 British students that got taken on for the women's wear course. People who I have followed in their footsteps are people like Bruce Oldfield, Alexander McQueen, and John Galliano. So it's a very prestigious university, and to get one of 6 places out of thousands and thousands and thousands of applicants, I did all right.
Yeah, you did. You always come across as if it was given to you, but blooming well wasn't given to you. You had to work your backside off to get there. And also, one of the things that you do is you bring fabrics and products to the customers at affordable prices, but the highest quality. And I think that's because of your college university background.
Yeah, well, I was never a student. I was never one of the students. I mean, I mentioned on air recently that one of the people I studied with, who was a foreign student, was actually Stéphane Renaud. There's a link there to his surname, and he was heir to the Renaud empire, and he was
Renaud. By the way,
I mean, very, very nice boy, but, he, as his student digs, he had a townhouse in Chelsea, he had a maid, a butler, and a chauffeur. But that was the level of money that I had. I couldn't afford the silks and the leather and everything like that. So I had to be ultra creative. And then coming from the fashion background, being head designer for a lot of brands, I know how much things cost in a factory. And I know that when we add leather, that adds on an 800% markup on a garment just because you've added a tiny bit of leather. So it's important for me that, the quality of the fabric is always there for everybody, but it is obtainable.
Yeah, exactly. But what I want to do is go straight into the final. Now, the final had 3 female contestants, which were Yasmin, Ola, and Kaz, who I think really deserved to be there. That's number 1. And their first pattern challenge, which they were given 3.5 hours, thank goodness for, although it still wasn't enough in my eyes, was the bias cut slip dress. Now, the criteria for this was that it had a cowl neck, it had the spaghetti straps, and I have to say, when I saw the loop turners, you know my thoughts on the loop turners. I've done these live on air, and I did crack it. However, I'm going to ask Alistair to explain the tip that he gave me, which saved my life on air, that they were given. And this is something that's really significant. I was talking to Alistair about this before. One of the things they've really made a play on, certainly in the last couple of episodes, is, and Patrick said it this time, they were given an array of luxurious fabrics in the haberdashery. In the past, it felt that the haberdashery had cotton, leather, all sorts, but it's really nice to know that they are shoehorning them into a particular type of fabric. They had to make sure that the fabric was to drape, hence the bias cut, to flatter the curves. They mainly used satins, obviously cutting on the bias, it can stretch. They had to handle it carefully. They had to do French seams, and they had that bias binding on the back, which actually sort of neatened the back edge off. And they also had to be very aware of how they handled the hem. So I'm going to go straight to Peter. What did you think of this particular challenge?
Well, obviously, I've never used a sewing machine in my life, so the challenge I thought was really difficult because it was figure hugging. It had to be right. However, I thought Kaz's straps, they were twisted, and I didn't like her fabric either. Sorry, Kaz, but I thought Ola was fantastic in that one. I thought she was the best.
So straight away, I'm going to say to you, because Alistair asked me to demonstrate the loop turners on TV, and I remember sitting here practically crying because I couldn't get them through.
The straps, the straps.
The spaghetti straps. Alistair, I'm going to get you to explain the tip that you gave me, which saved my life and made life so easy with the loop turners, which are available on the House of Alistair website. And if you use the BEE2025 code, you will get 15% off. They are a game changer once you've got your head over. Over to you, how to use them.
Okay, so the most important thing is you cut the fabric on the bias. Now, anyone that's sort of like maybe struggling, because they didn't explain it in the show. So if you've got fabric and you've got the selvage edges that are running here, that is, you've got your horizontal line that comes across. So the fabric is woven like this. What you're wanting to do is on that side, you need to use an angle, a 45-degree angle, which then tilts it to go diagonally. And that is what we call the bias seam. Now, a bias seam will make any fabric stretchy. So if you're using even heavy cotton drill, you will make it stretchy because you're cutting it on that bias. So my tip with Kim with these is to cut the fabric on the bias, but also once you the thickness that once you folded it over, the thickness you sew down will determine how fat your spaghetti strap is going to be when you pull it through. So if it's small, you want to cut the seam. So once you've seamed it, you want to cut the seam allowance almost the same size as the channel, the tube that you're making. Now, the reason for that is when you pull it through, it fills the inside of the spaghetti strap. If you cut it too big, when you try and pull it through, you're pulling more seam allowance through, which will make it harder to do so. Also, if you cut it too thin, there'll be too much room inside. So if you cut it identically the same size, you push your tool through, you make sure it's hooked onto the edge, and then you gently, with your finger and your thumb, if you massage the top and gently feel it starting to go in, Take your time and then delicately pull it through. You want to pull about that much through, and then you want to pull all the excess fabric over so you get the little tip at the end. Once you've got that tip, hold on to it, grab it for dear life, and then pull the whole thing through. More often than not, you will end up trying to pull something through and it will loop and it'll come out. All you simply need to do is where you feel the knobbly end, just take a pair of scissors and cut through. My also big tip with spaghetti straps, they were cutting a purpose piece of fabric. Cut a really long strip and feed it all the way through your machine. Pull the whole thing through and choose your best sections. That means that you will get really nice finishes. Otherwise, if you just cut the pattern piece they said and you pull it through, one might be slightly bigger than the other. Whereas if you've got a longer length, it means you can then cherry pick, because you want to cut the ends off. The ends are always going to be horrible. Regardless of who's doing it, the ends are always going to be a bit so that
sounds so difficult. So difficult just for a strap.
It's fiddly. It feels fiddly, but once you use the loop turners, it actually makes life so much easier. So the twist on, I mean, Kaz's fabric.
I was going to say, how did she get the twist?
She twisted it when she's sewing it because our fabric was really light. Now, that type of fabric, I was crying out because they were using the utility foot on the sewing machine, which is the basic foot. There's other that you could have used on that sewing machine. The first thing is, if you've got slippy fabric, consider your walking foot, your even feed foot, because it's going to control the fabric so much easier. And the other thing is seam tapes. Get the seam tape, put down and get them on.
The other thing as well, so for instance, a bit of a misconception as well, when you're using interlinings, it's a misconception that you put interlining on to stiffen everything. Interlining that's not necessarily what interlining is for. It adds body to the fabric, but should not interfere with the texture of the outside fabric. So if you imagine, and this is only when you're using woven interfacings, if you were to put a very, very lightweight woven interfacing on and then cut the strip on the bias, you will still get a stretchy rouleau loop. So don't think that you can't use interfacing on that, because if you're using a woven and you cut it exactly on the bias, just like the outer fabric, once you've adhered it and stuck it, it will still pull through and it will still give you that stretch.
I thought that they had used some interlining on the straps because I could see it. Now, Kaz's interlining was here and our fabric was down here. And it was stretching. The big thing with interlining, and how many times I've said this, is read your pattern. Wherever needs interlining, do it first. Leave it for 30 minutes to set, basically. And the other thing was press, don't iron. And I think I saw quite a bit of the stretches.
What's the difference?
What's the difference between pressing and iron? Like that, and ironing. The seam. Ironing. Right. It stretches it. So as soon as they were ironing the hems, the seams, by ironing it, it was stretching the fabrics, and particularly because they're on the bias. And also, Alistair, I don't know if you saw that, there was no pressing cloths used. Again, how they were so lucky that they didn't scorch their fabrics.
It did. As you're on about pressing, a very quick little tip, and I shouldn't really be telling you this, but when you've got your rouleau loop, and maybe it's a bit fat on one side or it's not as thin as you want it, get a hot iron, put the rouleau loop like a bit of string, put pressure on the iron and pull it like a lace over. What that does is it stretches it and it makes it thinner.
Wow.
So there's little tips that you can use.
Yeah. So I think once Kaz had twisted hers, she was beggared. She would have been better off starting again, because she was never ever going to get rid of that twist. So, Peter, you said you didn't like the fabric. Was it because of the colour of the fabric, and Ola and Yasmin used a plain fabric?
Yeah, I just think, on the fabric, it was very busy. I just didn't think it suited the brief. I think the plain colours show off a woman's figure much better. Just the shades of it when you've got a cowl neck, you don't get that with a pattern. I don't think you do anyway.
Yeah. The balance wasn't there, and I mean, the one thing I think people, if they use a pattern fabric, is because it covers a multitude of sins.
Yeah, I did think that.
Isn't right.
I did think that, yeah.
Because in the past, I mean, we've had it where they've used large checks and we've actually said use a plain fabric. If you use a plain fabric, you're usually pretty safe. The other thing that was to be taken into consideration, and I think this is why Kaz came third out of the three, although they are micro-judging it, is her fabric was very, very fine and stretched, whereas Ola's and Yasmin's had some weight to it and held the body of the dress. Would you agree with that, Alistair?
Yeah, I mean, look, everyone tunes in for tips, so I've got a few tips if you were to make a bias cut. This is an iconic dress. Now, obviously, you need to make sure you're wearing the right underwear. Okay, so a full body Spanx, not the ones that are just the shorts, that they will show up in a heartbeat. So anyway, that's tip number one. A bit irrelevant, but anyway. So with bias cut, so we're using slippy fabrics. So the best thing to do, and I go on about this, every workroom, every couture house, every tailor's I've been on in Savile Row, line your table in calico. An old bed sheet, if you've got one, fine. That means that the table ends up having some abrasion. When you're putting your slippy fabrics on, it will mean that the underneath fabric won't slip and slide. Those pressing mats, that'll just allow things to slip inside. Also, when you're using rotary cutters on pressing mats, on the actual self-heal mats, it starts to cut, so it actually gets little nicks. So if you're using something like a satin, you might end up actually unconsciously nicking the fabric underneath because it's lying on something that's got cuts on it. So that was heavy. I did notice that the actual sample they made up for this show was in quite a rather heavy satin.
It was.
Which would have made it a lot easier to use. The fabrics that they ended up choosing, bow down to them, fair play to them. That takes years of experience. And again, machinists that are employed by fashion houses to come in as a sample machinist to create what we call the gold sample. So that's what every garment is supposed to look like. They work in 2 or 3 fabrics. So not every machinist comes in. Some will work in cotton, some will work in leather, some will work in light fabrics like chiffon and silk. So you employ the appropriate machinist to do the particular job. Do not use rotary cutters for this job.
Although I have to say that I wrote down Ola actually used scissors.
She did. She did, and that's a wise decision. If you use a rotary cutter, going like that will create a lot of drag, and you stretch when you're already cutting on the bias. I also put here, when you're actually laying your pattern pieces down, what you actually want to do, especially for the body, there's 2 side seams on the centre back. Actually, there wasn't one on the centre back on this one. Yeah, so on the 2 side seams, make your life a bit easier. So, because you're French seaming, which means you start off with wrong sides facing, so the right sides are facing up, lay your fabric that way. Usually fabric on a bolt comes with the fabric face in.
Yeah.
So the face of the fabric, which is the outer side, is usually sandwiched in between, so they meet. If you turn it around, when you cut it, also, I'm banning pins.
I've got it here.
Do not use pins.
I would know not to put a pin in.
Yeah, I've got a smiley face for the scissors, and I've got using pins, ! On those fabrics. Yeah.
Yeah, you need to get rid of the pins. The reason for it is when you've cut it out on your calico line table, when you go to then baste, stitch it, it keeps the fabric really nice and flat. When you're working with French seams, it's the accuracy. Now, once you've gone down the seam once, you need to scant, trim, or whatever you want to call it, your neck of the woods. You need to cut the seam allowance about 3 millimeters away from the stitch line. Fold it over, delicately press it, and then once you've pressed it, then you go down the French seam again, and then you'll have a perfect French seam.
But you know, being on a program like that, your nerves really can get the better of you as well, and it's not a perfect sort of place to. It's just very, very stressful. I could see that you know they were getting stressed, and
Yeah.
I think it must be really difficult to make one of those dresses under that pressure.
And the other thing is that we've talked about in the past. I mean, I looked at all of the hems. None of the hems were great. But what you would do is you would hem it and then you would leave it for 24 hours before you would touch it. The
All
more
right, yeah, yeah,
the more steam and ironing they were putting on it, the wobblier the hems were actually getting. And you could see that. The other thing is, it was Wendy Gardner who we had on last week. She's spoken to quite a number of the Sewn Bee contestants. Anybody thinking about it, her advice was, if you make a mistake, and this is any reality show, swear
yeah,
like a trooper, because the cameras will not come to you if you're swearing like a trooper, because they don't want that on air. But you're right, Peter. I mean, it must be awful to have the interruptions from the judges, which
yeah.
obviously had Alan and Michelle interrupting you
And,
absolutely.
and that takes about an hour to just do that one little bit. You know, I mean, they set it up, so that's time is just running all the time. You
Is
know, and
that right?
well, it just did that probably in there for us. It did because they had to set the cameras up, but they might have like cameras rolling around the room. But
but that was part of your time. You know, if you were given
yeah,
5 hours or 10 hours or whatever,
yeah.
that's part of your time.
Yeah, and we were told if you make a mistake, let us know. But yeah, the swearing
Oh
bit
yeah.
would be good because yeah, they wouldn't come to you type thing.
Uh-huh.
But
Uh-huh.
they want things to go wrong so they could actually say, look, it's all right in the end type
Uh-huh.
thing.
Uh-huh. It's
And
it's a it's a sad thing, I think, with all these reality shows, that the entertainment in inverted commas is when something
yeah,
goes wrong, or the drama. That's what they want,
yeah,
because if
that's
everything
what they
went
want.
perfectly, it wouldn't be worth.
I mean, if I'm honest, if you cry or if you all of the if you cry, if you make a fuss, if you say you're starving, you seem to get on better. In my day, you didn't make a fuss; you just got on with your job, you know.
Uh-huh.
So
Uh-huh.
I think the younger generation are definitely different to me anyway. So
I think that's been. I do think when you look at all the reality shows, whether it's the Bake Off, obviously your show, the Interior Design Masters, and the Sewn Bee, I'm quite pleased, and we haven't talked about it, but the older generation sometimes get a bit of a raw deal, and I think it's come time and time again, Alistair, with the Sewn Bee, certainly with
yeah,
your show, and when we look at other shows,
yeah,
it can be they put them in my opinion, they put in, like, Gaynor was a fabulous sewer, and she was.
yeah,
You could not
yeah,
take it away from her. She was
yeah,
amazing. But she didn't necessarily have that design
yeah,
aspect of her sewing. And she
yeah,
was ordinary. When I say ordinary, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, because I know they all watch this, but she, even after the show, what she's gone back to is our home and our grandchildren, and so on for our grandchildren.
yes,
That's what
yes,
Gaynor is.
yeah,
And so, therefore, I sometimes think that the Gaynors of the world are at a bit of a disadvantage, even though,
yeah,
as a
yeah.
sewer, she was probably one of the best sewers that were out there.
Right.
It's
So I
entertaining.
can critique that because I don't know what a good sewer is. I just know, like Kit said last week, this is really bad sewing, and actually I could see it, because the cameras went straight on it. So yeah,
I don't think this week, Alistair, was the final I was expecting. I don't know what you thought.
No, I mean, there was no there was no well, maybe it's just me, but there was no sort of like anticipation, and there was no real wild card this year.
Yeah.
In terms of right, for instance, right, the wild card this year was Yasmin, because in the edit we haven't actually seen very much from Yasmin, and
yeah,
last week not about the story behind it. I'm saying from a sewing point of view, the execution of her 1920s flapper inspiration with the sailor look.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Was absolutely exquisitely done. I mean, look, the pleats at the front with the pinholes and things like that, I'm sort of discounting because I could see that all that pipe, all the decoration and piping was on point.
Yeah.
And it was beautifully done. Those were not easy fabrics to work with. She hadn't used a cotton base. It was like a silk satin she had used. That was not easy at all. I think there is so for instance, working in the sewing field, and for instance, obviously, you know, now working in theatre and working with a much younger generation than myself, I've become the older person, and there is a tendency to nobody really wants to properly learn, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. It's just, if somebody older can actually teach you like something, it's for instance, I was illy treated in terms of when I came through the ranks, and I was told, do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again. And in actual fact, when you do that and you do it again and do it again, you then become the master of that particular technique.
Yeah.
You will not become that just because it's turned out good or okay on this thing. For instance, the online presence and things like that, you're not necessarily going to learn those fundamental skills that you need. Yeah. For instance, in pattern cutting, which is what my thing is, I can cut you a 70-piece bodice and the rest of the evening gown. And for me, getting to that point, I went to St. Martin's and I didn't know very much about pattern cutting, and I knew very little about sewing. I went and did a night course as well as doing my A-levels and GCSEs. And I learned with this lady, and we were in this group, and I was a goth back then, and I had electric blue and pillar box hair, and I had my new rock boots, and I wanted to make PVC trousers, of course, because that was what I wanted to wear, and I wanted to make that. But I didn't have the foundations to be able to make that because I didn't understand the fabric. I didn't understand what to do. And all the other ladies in this night course, one was making her wedding dress, and then there was about 6 other people who were making Highland pleated A-line skirts. Now, don't get me wrong. I had my black nail varnish on. I had my big diamante rings. All of those women completely accepted me and were looking forward to the next week to see what outrageous outfit that I had put together for that. And my brother reluctantly, in his sports car, because he was a joiner and I was just eccentric, he would drop me off at the bottom in Cramlington High School for me to carry my sewing machine and my kit all the way up the road to go into this thing. And it was the lady who was running the course. She learned in Newcastle city centre. Most of her work in life was for a Jewish tailor, and she had to pick the tailor tacks off the floor to reuse. So, and she had to do all of that, and she taught me how to tailor tack, and I was like, wow, this is a skill set in itself. But I think these skill sets need to still be taught and need to there is no harm in not jumping. Don't leap before you can jump, and there's practice jumping before you take the leap. And there's a big emphasis on the fact that I could go into a factory in Cambodia, and I could speak to a factory manager, and I could say, I need to strip the cost of this garment down by £2.50. I've got it up here, but if a factory owner is saying, oh, this is really fiddly, okay, set the machine up, give me a pattern, give me the cloth, and you say, no, this is under 1 minute 50. So when you can do that, you've got the skill set. A bit like you, Peter, for instance, you don't need to speak a language to go to another country to cut hair.
No, you don't. And I lived in France for 10 years. So, yeah, I still, you know, could tear. You don't need, you're right there.
You need to know, need to know how things work and go wrong before you can actually become an expert in your field, and you know, and regardless of what field you are. Going back to this particular challenge, I think the bias cut dress was a really good one for them to do. Ola was first, Yasmin was second, Kaz was third. I think Kaz's fabric really caused her a lot of issues throughout the whole thing. I presume we all agree with the rankings. Does anybody disagree with the way it was ranked?
No, I agree.
No, I agree. I mean, it's just a shame. Kaz was drawn to that color of fabric and the print of the fabric, and unfortunately, that was the only thing that let Kaz down on that particular challenge, using such fine fabric.
And so therefore, sorry, Peter. Therefore, people.
I was just going to.
Go on. You go first.
I was just going to say, if you're a really good sewer, you should know which fabric to pick. Surely, I mean, why did you?
This is the thing. I was just about to say, if you go into a store and you've got an expert there on fabric handling, or you speak to like Alistair and I, and other experts there, stay away from that fabric. You could do it. She could have done it, not in that time scale, and she would have needed some help with some dressmaking tapes, I would have said, and she would have not had that stretch, and she could have achieved what she wanted to do, but certainly not in 3.5 hours. For something like the Salon bee, and they're a bit naughty because in one breath they're saying, "Oh, we're giving you all the fabrics that are really going to do the job." It still isn't an even playing field if your eye's drawn to a particular pattern and you pick that fabric up. And she didn't have that knowledge and that expertise to realise until she started cutting and working with it that just by handling it, I think it's stretched by an inch. So yeah, I think too late was the crime.
I think you just said, she should have perhaps changed that straight away, not carried on, with using that fabric.
Can I just give you another quick tip? And also, Peter,
yes, please.
You'll never look at hairspray again in the same way. So, for instance, because and this is a tried and tested method, so technically, sometimes what we do is we also can use a temporary adhesive spray, especially for really fine fabric. So this is coming into Kaz's fabric. So if she had sprayed her pattern, she had duplicated it, so she got 2 pieces, because it wasn't a pattern matching exercise with the fabric she had chosen. But if you had temporary adhesive and sewn through the paper to get your straight line on the first one, when you take that paper off, you then have that perfect seam to then continue your French seam. So you can do that. Also, because I, as a student, couldn't afford that posh adhesive spray, because in the 90s it was in its infancy and it was a lot of money. Let's just say that. I actually used hairspray.
Wow. No, it does make your fingers sticky when you use it,
But when you use steam, the glue deactivates. So as soon as it gets moisture on it, it deactivates. Now, I'm not saying go shh, but a light mix, it will actually stiffen the fabric up.
All these little tips.
Good little tip. I'm going to be a sewer after this, I can tell.
You will do.
Yeah. You're going to run out of hairspray, Peter, because everybody...
I tell you what, Peter.
Everyone's going to be running it.
You can take Kim shopping, get her a new outfit, and I'll do her hair.
That's fantastic. Brilliant. No, that's a really good deal, that one.
Oh, look at the sweat dripping down Kim's face.
So the next challenge that we had is Alistair's favourite, and I'm going to say that with it. It's the transformation. Now, as soon as they put the polka dot dress on, I can't remember who. Well, I think it was Yasmin said, "Oh, I love that dress. It was fabulous." And then, which is what really irks us, is they take perfectly good garments and then ask them to create a garment that really isn't that wearable. However, they were asked to take up to 4 garments that were sheer and translucent. There could be the tulle, the organza, they had a plastic mat involved. They had to create something that was sheer and revealing, but that was a sophisticated garment, and they had to ensure that the vital bits, the crotch and the nipples, were covered. They wanted to see them interplaying with different fabrics, layering them up. So I'm going to go straight to you, Peter. What did you think of this challenge? Because I know what Alistair's going to say.
Well, I think Kaz did do the best job then. It looked like an outfit to me. The other two didn't really look like outfits to me. However, if I think, from my point of view, if Orla had time to do some more of those big flowers, perhaps a different colour, it would have looked really effective, because I thought they looked really effective, the flowers that she did. But Yasmin, no, it just didn't look good. That's where Kaz started elevating, I think.
I mean, I thought what Yasmin did across the bust area by really pleating the fabric she had did actually work really well as a bralette, sort of a cover for that.
Yeah, I like this effect, this like feathery effect that he said. That looked great, but there was nothing else to it.
But remember, the thing I always say is they've got 90 minutes. It would take me 90 minutes to decide what I'm going to do. Alistair, I like, when I saw this challenge, I thought, oh my God, first of all, they've taken, I mean, they were really good garments, very wearable items, I thought. Alistair, I'm frightened to ask, what was your thoughts on, thankfully, the last transformation challenge of this series?
I think, look, it's not our favourite one. You know my viewpoint on this whole reuse, recycle, upcycle. Look, it's not and especially because Patrick is so passionate about it all, it just annoys me sometimes. It's not like repurpose. Look, if they said this is all dead stock fabric and here's dead stock haberdashery, and what that means is it's surplus to requirement. So it might have, say for instance, in Peter's terms, it might be hair dye that might be coming to the expiry date, and you do a special on it and say, look, you can come in and have it done for $5 or something, just because rather than just throwing it in the bin, we're using it. So there's a time and a place for it. Where this challenge, for instance, using opaque or see-through fabrics, and they had to make something amazing and glamorous out of it.
It's sophisticated.
I mean, we'll sort of, I mean, look, Yasmin was my favorite one in terms of sophistication. She had the pleating going over the bust area. For me, was extremely interesting. The rest of it, although they've only got 90 minutes, wasn't. But again, this is not a design challenge. Although they are they keep on coming into the fact that this is about them designing. Ola's flower represent. Again, I agree with Peter. I think in this case, what Chanel said is, more is more. I think if she had placed a few more, maybe it's different sizes, but then again, what she was trying to do didn't work out, and then she thought, oh, I'll just make flowers. So I get that and understand it. To be perfectly honest, what is modesty and what is, a photographer asked me years ago, said, I'm not being booked by by the modeling agencies. Why is that? They keep saying I need to be more edgy. And I went, well, you know what that means? And he went, no, I've got no idea. Tell me. I said, you need to expose a breast. I said it a little bit more curtly and on PC to him. And as soon as he did that, he was being booked left, right, and centre, because that was what edgy was. So it was a bit of a difficult challenge, really, because if you're having to, if you're just say to them, make a glamorous outfit in these fabrics, and not say to them, oh, you must have the modesty sort of thing. Just let them create a shape and a garment and what have you, and take out that caveat, because it was restricted all of them.
Totally agree.
Yeah, it wasn't my favorite one. I think if they'd done this, I would have liked to have seen that challenge maybe really early on, to see more of a breadth of what people would have come up with all those sheer fabrics. But again, using garments that could have been sold in a charity shop and repurposed, like that polka dot dress, I could see a lot of people taking that in or reusing it, or it's suiting someone to just cut it up and use it.
I think it offended Yasmin. I mean, she grabbed it off the mannequin, but I think she didn't really want to cut it up, if the truth be told, because a reaction as it was exposed, when they take the sheet off, was, oh, that's lovely. That's not the reaction that you should have. It should have big holes in it. It should be ripped. It should not be purposeful to be worn as a garment. And then I can understand the transformation challenges. So Kaz won that one. Yola got second, and Yasmin got third. I think we'll just skip by, but I presume you all agree with the judging on that one, or do you not agree with the judging?
No, I agree.
Yeah, I think also as well, Kaz's one was very, very, very Mary Quant-esque. It was very 60s. It was very much up Esme's street, because obviously she, came from that era, an era of design. And also one of my tutors at St Martin's was Willie Walters, who in actual fact was one of the second part of Esme. So she was actually her business partner. So yes, Willie, who used to have this very micro short fringe, and this is going back to the 90s, before it was even a real thing, but in Shoreditch it was like the in thing. Now everyone's got these little short fringes. But it's it's not my favorite challenge.
No, it's not my favorite either.
We've had a constant theme over the last God knows how many years. It's not our favorite challenge. Hopefully next time they will think about the challenges and think about that reuse, recycle, repurpose, which we're all for. And like you say, Patrick, quite passionate about that, and obviously keeping things in the UK or Britain. So I'm going to move straight on to the made to measure. Now, this time we're given 5.5 hours, and it's always a joy, and I think it's always more emotional, and it made me very emotional when they use their own models. So Yasmin had her fiance Sophie, Kaz had her daughter Florence, and Ola had her sibling Ro, who were their particular models. Now this one, I'm going to say this right, Trupoli, which is a trick to the eye. It had to be a garment that was deceiving to the eye, that created an optical illusion. It was for special occasions. They could introduce 3D, have some perspective. The judges wanted to be surprised. They could use like engineering, bone and material, anything that was 3D. I have to say that compared to Asma's dress a couple of years ago, I think it's 2 seasons ago, when the model walked on with one dress and then dropped it and it became a different dress, that to me was like the wow factor. I was a bit underwowed on this. However, I'm going to go straight to you, Peter. And what did you think of this?
Well, I mean, I've liked Ola all the way through, and I think I was expecting something massive, and it didn't work in my eyes, because these things were sort of almost wobbling, and even I noticed like the stitching around was bad. The stitching around there. I think she let herself down. She let me down as well, because when the model was standing up, it didn't look black. You could still see bits of colour, However, Kaz, again, for me, her backstory, the whole rib cage, which I thought was fantastic. It was a great idea, and that little bit of red there, I thought that was great. However, you know, Yasmin was, I liked hers as well. I didn't understand how she got the tie wrong.
Yeah, she had a problem with her collar. I think, you know, you said before about stress, cameras, time, all
Yeah,
of that. And I think
yeah,
when because she actually had the collar right, but she thought, I've got the collar wrong, she wasted half of an hour. So going back to
yes,
what you said on the show that you were on,
yeah.
that stress of being in the moment, do you not think that that's what got her rather than anything else, Peter?
I think so. I think you're like a swan on the top, but your feet are going, you know, paddling away underneath. I mean, she got the collar right there, but when you waste a half an hour, which is precious time, I would imagine, in that scenario, you know, it's not very good. And the more, sometimes if you make a mistake, you get stressed again and stressed again. But bless, I mean, they all look great. I thought they all looked great, the dresses. I think Ola shouldn't have spent as much time on the black dress, more of the illusion she should have spent time on, I think.
I was disappointed when Ola said she hadn't practiced that
Yeah, yeah.
aspect of the dress. Alistair, what was your thoughts?
Right. So coming from
when he says it right, oh my God. Oh,
right, this wasn't my favorite finale.
no.
Okay, and I will just say that obviously illusions. So for instance, Orla, it wasn't for instance, the flat panels, they were that you could see they were already curving. I wasn't a
Yes.
fan of the fabric around the noodles wasn't tight enough. So
Yeah.
that's already going to add some slackness. If we were doing that as a film costume, we would have created a cage that was underneath, and then we would have had wires that would come out into
Yeah.
the noodles to keep that perfectly still, so that
Bought them.
whatever moved, even if you were walking, didn't like move like that. You could see the rough stitching going around, and I thought she's shown such precision and such elegance in her sewing throughout the entire competition, and I can't take that away from the girl. But obviously, it was just this last effort. So, for instance, I would have done something. So, a lot of fashion designers use this, and it's all about the drama. So, for instance, you know, you've got reveals, you've got concealments, and you've got, you know, suddenly, you know, a dress disintegrates in front of your eyes, and you wonder where it is. Or there's something to do with UV lights, and suddenly it changes into something completely different. If I had been her, I would have constructed a dress where I would have concealed pleats and zips to get, so the model would have come down and they would have purposely unzipped the zips, and then suddenly some rainbow fan came out of the black dress.
Yeah.
Some sort of reveal like that. I would have thought that would have, but I get the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got the idea.
But practically wise, turning round the corner and seeing these giant tubes coming out, I get the concept and I think it's very clever, and I get where she's coming from. Kaz's one, I do love the story behind it. I just feel that it was very visual in terms of what you saw was what you kind of got.
Yeah.
The sewing across the board for all three of them, a lot of it was rushed, and I do get the finish that from all of them that have gone through wasn't quite there for the final. So yeah, I wasn't my viewpoint as well with Yasmin's is that if she had taken that wire a very quick way, and look, it's easy for me to say in hindsight, okay, I have sometimes 6 months to develop a catwalk collection, a theatre production, or whatever it is that I'm working on. I would have wrapped that wire in the same tulle. I'd have wrapped it so it covered it to conceal it, then what she needed was to create that illusion. She needed larger pieces to then, and more layers, so that the solid part, which was where it was near the dress, was so thick with black, and then it blended out. But that was just a layering issue. There wasn't enough layers of tulle to get that. I really enjoyed her concept. I got what she was after. It was just, I just didn't think there was the absolute drama. We've had a lot of characters throughout this season. I think this season we haven't had as many characterful different approaches maybe to the design challenge. Sorry, not design challenge, but sewing challenges. But I would say that they all gave it their all. It was this brief was not about, it wasn't freedom of choice. They were given something to follow, and to create an illusion outfit, I think is a bit of a tall ask for somebody. I would have thought if they'd said to them, this is the final, you tell us who you are. And left it at that, and then they had free reign to create whatever it was they wanted, and then it should have been judged, and it should have been judged on the sewing, not the concept of what they came up with.
Because we've had finals where the final garment has been exquisitely sewn, and that wasn't the case. I mean, with Kaz's, I really wanted her to undo the zip and the heart to come out. That little bit of red was great, but had that long zip on, which I understood, which is where, you know, all
it would have been great to open up, wouldn't it? That would have been brilliant.
Yeah. So I was a little bit disappointed. What I also think is really sad on the judging, and I mean, Alistair and I have criticised and the judging, and it's great sitting here, you know, not actually being on the show, but I do feel that this whole final was based on that final challenge, and I just think back to all the wonderful sewing that they've done. I mean, I've championed Yasmin because I thought some of the garments she has produced have been brilliantly sewn. Don't get me wrong, Kaz I'm pleased she's won. Ola has come out with some wild ideas, but to me, it was all down to this one challenge. And I think when it's the final, that they should look at all of the things that they've done from episode 1 to the final episode, and then make an informed decision.
I mean, quickly saying that, I mean, when I did Interior Design Masters, I won the first challenge outright. Matthew Williamson said, you know, you nailed it. This is exactly met the brief, blah, blah, blah. And the second week, I got chucked out, and everybody said, well, how can you win one week and then send you home the next? You know what I mean?
And the thing is because we've discussed briefs, Peter, which was particularly it's the how the briefs are interpreted by the judges, and we've seen briefs in the Sewn Bee, which is why I wanted you to be on as a judge, because after watching your first one, thinking, wow, I'm championing you because you're from the Northeast, and then the second one, I actually didn't think that you should have gone out, and it wasn't the bias because you're a Georgian, you're from the Northeast,
and you're a hairdresser as well,
and you're a hairdresser as well. That I genuinely thought that the interpretation, it's all down to the editing. It's down to, and you've said this to me, who are the individuals, what characters have they got, and it's a bit more than just what your kids are.
Because I can remember I got the come in, well, Alan Carr came and set it up, and I had built a library. Nobody else had done that. And he said, what's it like to be original? And I said, well, you know, I am original. That's exactly what I want to be. But none of that was shown. It was all the negativity that was shown, because obviously I was going home that week, you know. So it's a weird and wonderful thing to do. And I'm pleased they have done it, and I'm pleased I did it. But yeah, it's very stressful. Can I ask you, as sewers, is 5 hours a long time, or is that a given time to make something fantastic?
I would say no. I mean,
no, I mean, look, I mean, for instance, look, they in, in most cases. So if we boil it down, so the first challenge, the pattern challenge, they've never seen it before, but they are given the pattern pieces and they're given some form of write up. But to be given 4.5 hours to do something that they've never constructed before, sometimes, for instance, you have to look at a pattern to actually understand how it's connected, and then they've got a write up of telling them how it's actually got to go together. So that's a bit unfair anyway. And to do it from start to finish. I mean, obviously, if you're a pattern cutter and you can sew, then you have an understanding of both. But these guys genuinely have a pure understanding of, I've cut the pattern out, I'm reading the instructions, and I'm sewing it up. Some of them do have pattern cutting knowledge, but then the transformation will just skip because that's just let's just call it a jolly. But the made to measure, they're only given half an hour extra. Now, for instance, if you've sewn something wrong or something takes time. Now, I'm used to industrial sewing machines. So in my head, I'm thinking, zzz, zzz, like Mike Bolden's Knicker Factory. It goes, it goes through quickly. However, when you're using a domestic machine, even when you put it on full speed, it's not going as fast as an industrial machine. So hats off to them for producing what they can in that time. And also, the main challenge, most of the time, they're allowed to have practiced it at home. And so it's not their first time at actually making it. So they do have a bit of insight knowledge as to, I better watch out when I put the zip in, or I'm making that where the hem comes together, or when I do the closure on the neckline, it needs to go like this. Make a note, remember. So that speeds it up. But the hours that they've got, I think they're actually quite slim. It's like when the difference is like Bake Off, for instance, that it's going to take maybe, I don't know, an hour, or maybe for cookies it's going to take 38 minutes in the oven. That's a little bit more time precise, whereas with sewing it's not. And to be honest, you could cut from the same bolt of fabric. You could give somebody 5 meters to somebody, and you could give another 5 meters from the same bolt that's been woven to somebody else, and the fabric can just decide to behave in different ways.
Or you get a machine that the needle breaks, or you have what Yasmin had with that collar, which she didn't do it wrong, but she just had that mental breakdown in the show. She lost half of an hour, and that is a lot of time. It's a heck of a long time. I would say I would want 3 times the amount of time that they get, because the first thing that you're told is read the instructions. Well, by the time you've read the instructions and processed it, there's a good 10 minutes. Go and choose your fabric. They don't choose the fabric with sort of having read the instructions. They look at the front and then they go rushing off. And in fact, it was quite funny because on the pattern challenge this time, one of them said, "We don't have to run. There's only 3 of us." You know, little things like that. They're making decisions that at home you would take some consideration. And take your time and make some consideration. So I do think that they don't give the right amount of time, but that's also to put the pressure on them for them to make mistakes, because that's what they want, and for to make an entertainment program. Ultimately, the Sewing Bee, as much as it's like Marmite, you love it or hate it, people watch it even when they hate it. It's to put people under pressure. It is an entertainment program, sadly. But Kat was crowned the winner, which I have to say, I'd personally championed Yasmin all the way through, but never mind. Kaz won. It was lovely to see her with her family. It was lovely. It was so funny because at the end, our daughter, when they were talking about her winning, she goes, "It was because of me." Which
I know,
first time laughing. I thought that was brilliant. What's also nice at this is to see all of the contestants come back and to see how they're doing. So Peter now sews for his family. Safi sews for herself, and she actually finished her MA. Glendora's gone back to driving her bus and has gone into quilting and made the most fabulous quilt. Novello actually went onto a 6-month sewing course. Jess is just with her family and sewing for her family. Dan, who is from up here, has left the circus and is now making panto costumes for a local theatre company. Stuart who was the engineer, who was the real technical guy, has gone into quilting. Gaynor has gone home and is with her grandchildren. Kit is still self-drafting and has actually made some patterns for and made something for a red carpet. Yasmin, who was our finalist, who was a scientist, is actually moving to Australia with her fiance.
Yeah.
Ola has actually gone back to university but changed her course, and she's done a fashion course. And then Kaz went on a fabulous holiday with her family and has now got pink hair. So it was lovely to see the feedback from all of them. What people have got to remember is that this was filmed last year, and this has gone out very, very late. We normally expect this to be out considerably earlier in the year, and I think the filming starts for the next season August, September time. So it's right. Well in the can. Are you pleased, Kaz won, Alistair?
Look, I think as a threesome. No, I think as a threesome, I think they congratulations to Kaz, and she's been a fantastic sewer, and the execution of her work throughout the series I have enjoyed. Mm-hmm. And also I might have disagreed with the fact that when it was Versace week that she didn't quite hit the brief, but I could never ever diss Kaz on her actual sewing capability. Mm-hmm. So just before we get any comments about that, let's just say that I thought they were all very worthy winners. And in actual fact, for the first year, I think I will say that in actual fact, I couldn't call it in the final. Yeah. And I think they all were, and I know this sounds a bit of a get out, but it's not actually not coming from me, because I will actually just tell it as it is. I actually think all of them are on such an equal playing field, and there isn't one of them that stands out from the other one in terms of capability and what have you. I'm interested to see what happens next with them, actually.
I totally agree with you. It's the first time where if you'd given, they have done it where they gave 2 garments of the week when Ola and Kit won garment of the week. This one where if they'd given them all the winners, because I think looking back over the series, and it's been an interesting series this year, I couldn't call it. I'll be honest with you. I think they all deserved it, and I just thought it was lovely that they were all pleased for each other, and they are all winners to get. There's no way on this earth you get me in a studio sewing under that type of pressure with cameras. It's bad enough doing live TV, Alistair, with a camera beaming down for 45 minutes, 90 minutes, whatever we're doing. But to do it under that pressure, no, they can keep it. And Peter, same to you. How on earth you traipse all the way down from Newcastle, from Whitley Bay, all the way to Brighton with your van full of stuff? You're still working full time, and that's the thing. People's lives still go on in between all of this. And you went down there and did that, and then had to come back, and then had to go back again. How you put yourselves through that, it's great to tick it off your CV, but I hold my hat off to you all for doing it. I think you're amazing.
Thank you very much. It was difficult. It was very difficult, that bit, the travelling. There was some contestants that had people driving for them that I didn't really get the option. They just said, "Can you drive?" And I said, "Yeah." So that was it. Down to Brighton, off to location, back to Brighton, back to Newcastle. Brief for the next week. It was very stressful, the whole lot. But I did it anyway, and say I did it. So
well done you.
And I think those 3 girls or 3 women that were in the final, they can say I did it. I did it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. We do get to see the contestants, and we know that they watch the Natter. So well done to every single contestant, whether you went out in week 1 or you made it to the final. Well done. Before we go, Alistair, I need to announce the winners of last week's giveaway.
Yes.
So people know. So this is their YouTube name. So the first one is So Nice and Handmade, and then Carol Griffiths 1726 and Alison Williams 3806. Can I just say that being very naughty, and what I need to do is to put everybody's names on a big long list, and we'll be sending out all of the prizes at the end of this particular event. Alistair and I do this as volunteers. We don't get paid for it from anybody. So it's been 10 weeks. It's quite a big commitment, isn't it, Alistair, in amongst all of the work that we do. So please bear with us. You will get your prizes, I can promise you. They will be sent out, but I do apologise. But it's actually easier for us if we could leave them all to the end anyway and send them out in one batch. Thank you, Alistair, for being so generous with the giveaways this season.
Well, we do have something coming up, I believe, in the next couple of weeks, and there will be a brand new giveaway. There won't be a giveaway this session, but just keep your eyes peeled on YouTube, because we've got something coming up.
Yes, we have. We've got lots of little things in the offing, shall we say. Peter, can I just say a massive thank you to coming on? I know you're not a sewer, but I really wanted somebody from a different reality show on this, because it's nice to hear what your thoughts were. Thank you so much for giving up your time to come on and share this with us. And obviously you've had to watch all the episodes as well.
Yeah. No, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. But can I say that I'm so pleased that Alistair went to Cramlington High School? That's made my night.
You could be twins.
I don't think so.
So if you want to find out where Peter is, I will put a link on. He has a fabulous salon in Monkseaton. I'm very handy. Alistair will be appearing on your screens very soon. Hobbycraft TV and
TV
TV.
TV. I think my dentures are. I think the fixer dent is wearing off.
Yeah, I'll be Hobbycraft TV this week, and I'll be popping up this weekend, and I'll be popping up in the near future periodically.
Oh yes, and I've got a Sewing Street show, which is going to air on the 26th. Fingers crossed.
Fabulous. And don't forget that 50. How long can we keep this 15% discount on? Can we keep it on until? Can I push me luck and say the end of the month, end of September?
Why don't we say we'll keep it until December?
Wow. So anybody who wants a bargain from the House of Alistair site, you just need to use at the checkout where it says promotion code BEE2025, and you will get 15% off, and it's on sale fabric still because he hasn't changed it. Okay. So thank you very much, everybody, and we'll see you very soon. And keep looking at the YouTube channel, because we have got some things definitely coming up this year. Thanks again, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Peter. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, lovely.